back to basics number 4. A wife's engagement, meaning engagement with us and with the process, with us as husbands and with the process of healing, a wife's engagement is directly related to the level of safety she feels. And again, duh. But I think it's important for us to unpack that a little bit. And Shelley and I were talking about, okay, what does safety even mean? Like, if you read stuff out there about what is safety in the context of a relationship, there's a bunch of different answers. And it, of course, runs the quadrant. Well, there's emotional safety and intellectual safety and physical safety and spiritual safety. And, there's all sorts of different ways to kind of slice it and dice it. This is kind of my summary of an aspect of safety. Maybe they all roll up to this, I don't know. But this is the way I think about it in the context of recovery. And when I said this to Shelley, she was like, that feels like a summary statement from 30,000 feet. It doesn't quite feel like that on the ground when there's acute things like triggers. So going with what she said, maybe from 30,000 feet, safety is confidence that her sense of self will be protected and preserved. And you heard me say this a couple weeks ago. For so many wives, what's at stake here is their sense of self. For some wives, their sense of self got robbed in all the acting in. It got just morphed and changed and downgraded and degraded in all of the acting in. For other wives, it really happened with the acting out. It happened with disclosure and discovery is like where their sense of self got lost or started to get attacked. And so for a lot of wives in the process of recovery, really what they're navigating and what they're really trying to sense out and feel their way through is my sense of self going to stay intact here? If we have this conversation, if we engage this thing, if we talk to Jason, if we, talk to our coach, whatever, is my sense of self going to be, am I who I am? Is it going to stay intact? Is it going to be protected and preserved as we walk through whatever it is that we're dealing with? Okay? So the idea that a wife's engagement, and listen, this is nuanced, and this is another thing that Shelley brought up. It's so nuanced at everybody's house, right? Like 30,000 feet fits, and it's so nuanced. So as we're talking through this, you're taking notes. As a wife, you're going, yeah, at my house, that fits. Or no, at my house, that doesn't fit. Okay, just make note of that. Be sure to tell him that, okay? So safety, the confidence that her sense of self will be protected and preserved. And there are many things that attack that safety. There are a handful of things, a lot of things attack or put that safety at risk. Like too many things to list will put that safety at risk. But what I want to do is just take a chance to talk through a few of them just as a reminder for us. Okay, and again, as a wife, if it fits, tell him. If it doesn't fit, tell him. Okay. So first, the questions she has to ask herself are things that the questions can be things that jeopardize her sense of safety. Okay, and again, her confidence that her sense of self won't be shredded again. There are all these questions that put that in jeopardy, and y'all have heard me talk about this, but I'm reminding you. At any given moment, and we talked about this at the Worthy of a Trust workshop a little bit last weekend. I kind of think of a silly picture. It doesn't really depict it very well, but it's the best I got at the moment. There are all these, if this is her, there are all these different things questions pulling at her in different ways, okay? So who was I, or am I becoming, is a question she has to ask herself. And so I think about that like pulling. Who was I through this relationship? And who am I now in recovery? And who am I becoming if I look at this overall process and at any given point, who am I becoming? And wives have to ask themselves that question. And sometimes who I'm becoming is, some wives will say, I'm just becoming bitter and angry. I'm losing my sense of self. Some wives will say, I'm just becoming hopeless. I'm walking around with despair and depression all the time. I'm losing my sense of self. Some wives will go, oh, I'm not any of that. I'm actually finding my autonomy, which in itself isn't bad. And there's also an element of disintegration in that relationally, which can be at face value, there can be a reassurance in the autonomy, like I can be okay without you in my life. And there's also a little bit of a jeopardy of sense of self, because while there might be a question of can I really be okay, there's also a sense of like who I am is coming undone because a huge part of me is coming undone. And that part of me is you. Okay, so there are these questions. And then there are questions about you. Like, who were you when we met? And who are you right now? And who are you becoming? And those things are like, I'm thinking of those like all pulling at her. And then there's we. Who were we when we were 19 as a couple? And who were we when we were 27 and had our first baby and you were acting out? And who are we today in recovery? And who are we becoming? And some wives are sitting there going, I kind of like who we're becoming because we're more on. I mean, it's hard, and we're more honest than we've ever been. And some wives are going, I don't like who we're becoming because it feels like we're becoming more and more disintegrated. And so some wives are struggling with who we're becoming. And then there's like, for her, there's a tug of war of who am I if I stay? Who am I if I finally decide to cash it in? If I leave, who am I? Then there's some acute things that come up. Like, who were we? And when I say we, I mean like you and me. Like, who was I when you were acting out the first time and I discovered your affair, but I didn't leave you? Who were you when you were lying to my face about not acting out again? Then it gets even more acute. Who am I to believe last week when you said that was the truth? Who am I? And there becomes these acute things. We're also I didn't write up there, who am I to my mom? Right? Who am I based on what my sister thinks about me? And the point is there's all of this tension and these things that pull at a wife, these questions that kind of sometimes feel like they demand answers within her, and they all jeopardize her confidence that her sense of self will be preserved and protected. Okay? When you, as a husband, can speak to some of these questions, sometimes it's rhetorical. There's no answer that's going to be a good answer, and nothing's going to make it feel better. And sometimes the answers are important. Right? Sometimes, who were you when we had our first child and you were acting out? Sometimes there's an answer that it's really important because you're able to articulate, that's when I was struggling at work and self-absorbed and entitled, and that whole rules don't apply to me thing was going on, and I was looking at you in the pregnancy, and instead of looking at you with love, concern, and care, I was looking at myself and how I felt deprived of my needs getting met, and instead of being someone who lives with character above board and tries to figure out how to work through that, I cheated. I made that up, obviously, but you get the point. Like, sometimes the answers can be helpful. The who were you things, okay? Or who are you now things. So it's important to remember as husbands, and wives kind of know this intuitively, that when those questions, I mean, they're going on all the time for a lot of wives, but when there's something that's really bringing those questions to light, her sense of safety is in jeopardy. Okay? Okay, next thing. Let's keep going. Next thing. Everything is a clue. Everything is a clue as to safety. So I bring this up again because sometimes as husbands we forget about this and we become lackadaisical or casual about some things here, and it's important that we not get lulled into that. When I say everything is a clue, what I'm talking about, let's use a different color just for fun. What I'm talking about is like 5 senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. What are the 5 senses? We're not even talking about the 6th sense of her intuition. What I'm talking about is 5 senses. A wife's sense of safety is like, it's tuned into those things. And for some wives, there's a hypervigilance in that's born out of the trauma. For some wives, it's not necessarily hypervigilance as much as it's just an intentionality sometimes that a wife has because she wants to see where there is safety. And so y'all hear me joke about this sometimes. I say it tongue in cheek, but it really is true. It's like where you set your bag down when you come home is a clue. How hard you set your bag down when you come home is a clue. The way you interact with the guy who honks at you in traffic is a clue. The way you interact with the kids is a clue. What you order at dinner is a clue. Like all of those things, and I'm not saying this so that as husbands we can sort of like have that sense of like the boogeyman, like we got to be really careful with everything because she's watching. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, and by the way, when you're moving towards character, when you're moving towards becoming who God is calling you to be, you don't have to worry about that because your life is going to speak for itself, okay? What I'm saying is for a wife, she's looking to see about those clues and negotiating her sense of safety based on those. Like, oh, the guy cut you off in traffic, and instead of stopping our conversation and cussing the guy out and giving him one finger wave, you actually just shrugged your shoulders and stayed in a conversation with me. That's meaningful. It feels safer. It feels like I'm not going to get shredded here. Okay? The way you handle the kids, they spill their milk across the floor, and normally you go, come on, guys, really? Or maybe it's just at my house. I go, come on, guys, really? Like, it's not playtime, it's dinner time. And then you huff and puff and grab a towel, not a hand towel, and mop everything, right? And this time you go, hey, everybody makes mistakes, no biggie. Will you guys run and grab a towel? I'll grab some paper towels. Let's just work together to clean it up, guys. And it's like she's going, that sounded different. That looked different. I'm not sure if I believe it, but okay, file that away. That was a different response, right? All of these things are a clue. And I'm saying that a little like taste. How is taste a clue? Yeah, like that's not, but you get the point. I'm trying to drive home the point here is like, it's everything. It's the way you put the toothpaste on your toothbrush. It's everything. And for some wives, they're in a place where they're going, it's not everything for me. Like, I'm tired of looking at his toothbrush. I'm tired of thinking where he sets down his bag. Tired of worrying if he yells at the kids this time or not. And those things are sort of like, I don't know, more muted, if you will. Some wives are in that place. A lot of wives are still looking at everything. Okay. The other thing that comes up in this is that she has a sensitive radar. Most wives have a really sensitive, especially as a wife, if your history included abuse and neglect and abandonment and things like that, you already have a hypersensitive radar to safety. But then post-betrayal, it'll be amplified even more. And there's a sensitivity there, that radar there, that causes a wife to start to put the dots, it's like her brain starts to put the dots together before the dots have even shown up. And it can be really like unnerving for husbands when this thing is happening, especially if the dots that she connected based on history aren't really aligned with what's happening in the present. And let me give you some example of what I'm trying to say here. So like, for a wife, she knows that if she doesn't, expect, that's a T. If she doesn't expect disappointment, let's just say, if she doesn't expect disappointment, then when there is disappointment, she's caught off guard. And at that point, there's like let's put that up there. Caught off guard. And caught off guard is the last thing she ever wants to experience again. She doesn't want a surprise again where she feels like she's the butt of the joke. She's the one that's duped. She's the one who had her hopes up or had her integrity aligned, and then that gets dismantled. Okay? So for some wives, it's like, I have to expect that you're not going to follow through this week. And for some husbands are going, man, like all you see is the negative. Like it's like you don't even have any hope or encouragement that I will follow through. And some wives are going, well, like based on history, of course I don't. There's a precedence. But besides that, I can't allow myself that. I have to expect disappointment right now. And some husbands are go, yeah, and I'm going to live into exactly what you expect of me. But you can't think that way, okay? Because I don't want to be caught off guard again. And then the flip side is that if she doesn't expect it, if she does expect it but doesn't get it, then there's this weird place where it's like mildly relieving, like there's a little bit of an exhale, but it's also really disorienting and confusing. Where she goes, like, I expected your disappointment. I expected to be disappointed, but you didn't disappoint me. And there's relief in that. And at the same time, it's like, wait a second. What is this? And for many wives, the answer to that is that they have to view it as manipulation. Again, doesn't apply for every wife every time. But for a lot of wives, it's like when they say, they get to session and one of us goes, hey, talk to me about the homework. How was it doing that? And the husband goes, well, it was this, 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 and this. And a wife goes, you did it? He goes, yeah, I did it. She goes, did you do what they asked you to do? Yeah, I did exactly what they. Well, you were just checking the box. I'm sure you just did it to check the box. And for some husbands, sitting there going like, but no, I really tried. I promise, I tried. But she can't. There's a little bit of a weird like, he did his homework. But then there's also this like, wait, what's really going on here? Because it's disorienting that you didn't disappoint me. And that place is really putting this in jeopardy. Sometimes wives will even say, like, everything in me wants to believe him, and I actually do. Or I actually see the good, or see the hope, or see the progress, or I actually do. But I don't know if I can trust that in me to see that clearly or sense that clearly. And if I can't really trust it in me, then I don't want to him. Because it'll hurt worse if he's actually duping me. Because I duped me. Okay? There's like a weird thing that happens in there for wives that's just really scary when their safety is in jeopardy. Okay? Some of the wives on the call, you're like, duh. Well, for some of us husbands, we forget this. Okay? So there's sensitive radar. Everything is a clue to judge safety. Okay? So, what do we need to do? Keys, like kind of keys for safety, if you will. We're going to need some more room. Let's go. We're going to take this off right here. Actually, hold on. I don't want to lose it. And I'll forget about what I wrote if I'm not careful. So I got to take a picture. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about next is a little bit of easier said than done. And for some of us, we're like, yeah, that's what I'm working towards, but I'm not there yet, haven't arrived. I understand. I just think it's really important for us to keep this stuff fresh. Okay? So we're talking keys for safety. Okay? Keys for safety. So first, and these are in no particular order. Truth. The truth. Fastest way to undermine safety is the lie. The thing that takes more work to, like the hole that's the deepest, that's the hardest to get out of, is dishonesty. Okay? So no more, and we're talking about a couple things. No more half-truths. No more half-truths. We're not doing that anymore. No more omissions. Okay? They're like, I told her everything except for that one thing. Okay? And no more of the unless she asks. Okay, some of us are in that camp. Like, I'm willing to tell the truth if she asks the question, but I'm not going to volunteer it. Okay, so keys for safety: truth. No more half truths, no more omissions, no more unless she asks. Okay, truths. Next, honoring her needs requests. Okay, honoring her needs. Okay. Some of us, we've gotten into, or we've not gotten, we've been in a mode of, I'll say it this way, her needs met my way. Her needs met my way, okay? Which means her needs aren't going to be met. They're going to be dishonored. All right. So a wife says, hey, I just need you to not have your phone in the bathroom. And the husband goes, no problem at all. And then the next day he goes into the bathroom and takes his phone. And then she goes, what in the world are you doing? I just asked you yesterday not to take your phone in the bathroom. And he said, well, I knew that you wouldn't want me to have my phone in the bathroom when I'm going number 2 because I'm in there a long time. But if I just have my phone in my pocket when I go to number 1, that's not a big deal. And he's going, I'm meeting your needs, but I'm meeting it my way, kind of on my terms, which means you're not meeting it at all, okay? A wife will say something like, hey, I don't want you to see that accountability. I don't want you to talk to that accountability partner anymore. I don't want you to, I don't want you to talk to that accountability. Like, I feel like he's not for us. He's definitely not for me. And so he just makes me scared. And just please have a season of not talking to that accountability partner. And the husband goes, yep, got it. Okay. And then he'll text with him. And then a wife will go, hey, I just saw a text from John, and I clearly asked you, last week, please don't talk to John anymore. And the husband will go, oh, well, I wasn't talking to John. I was just texting with him. Like, that kind of stuff you're not just not honoring the needs, you're dishonoring the needs, right? And we'll do that kind of stuff, sometimes really conniving and dirty. And sometimes we'll do it completely unwittingly and obtuse. And both count. Okay? So, just side note, if you're in the obtuse and unwitting category and you get called on it, humility is your friend. Humility is your friend. Right? Not logically argue why texting is not talking and they're not the same thing, or number 1 is different than number 2 in the back. Right, you get the point. Humility is your friend. Okay? Next, consistency. Again, on these, but it's important for the reminder. Consistency has a couple of facets that's important for us to talk about. 1, no more unilateral decisions. Some of y'all are tired of hearing that. More unilateral decisions. We've agreed I'm going to take this route home from work. Well, today there was a massive traffic jam, so I went the other way. We agreed you're not going the other way. So don't make unilateral decisions, because that'll blow everything up. That will jeopardize her safety. Okay? And listen, you can't predict it. And wives can't predict it within themselves. There are some wives on this call where one day you make a deviation on your route home, and it's because there was a massive traffic jam, and she says, hey, why did it take you an extra 5 minutes? You said, hey, there's a massive traffic jam, and I went this way instead of the way that we agreed upon. And she goes, well, good job, because you'd have been home really late, and I'm glad you got home on time. And then the next week, you go, man, massive traffic jam, so I went the other way. And then she goes, why would you go the other way? We agreed you're only going this way. And then we're going, last week you were high-fiving me for getting home on time because I went the other way. You don't know. She didn't know either. Trust me, she's not gaming you. She's not arbitrarily moving the pieces around, hoping you'll be confused and you never quite know where the goalpost is, so you always fail. She's not doing that. She doesn't even know. It just lands in a way that's relative to this that she can't predict, even within herself. And listen, when that kind of, just bonus, for most wives, when that thing that I just described happens, she lays her head on the pillow at night and goes, why am I a crazy fill in the blank? He's right. Last week I was okay with it. And this week I'm not. And I don't even know why I'm not. But I know I'm not. And I know it was. So what's wrong with me? Like, yeah, I'm off that soapbox. Okay, so consistency. Okay? No more table turning. Do you want to unwind her sense of security real quick? Her sense of safety real quick? Turn the tables. Right? This is one of those things. Hey, why'd you get home late tonight? Well, I texted you and said, what time would you like me home? And you didn't respond. So I just figured I'd come home when I come home. You just turn the tables on her. She's going, hey, I feel unsafe that you didn't come home when you normally would come home, when you say you come home. But it's my fault you didn't come home and because I didn't, right? Which is blame shifting. It is blame shifting, but table turning has a more insidious kind of feel to it. Okay? So no more table turning. Right? It's that same example, right? I went this way. You're mad. Why are you mad? Last week you were fine with it. You don't even make sense in your own rules. You don't even make your boundaries for you. Don't even make sense to yourself. Now it's like, whew, which is really, really hurtful and erodes all sense of security, safety. Okay. So no more table turning. Last two. Us as husbands holding space for skepticism. Holding space for skepticism. This is a key for safety. Right? You decide, hey, I'm actually going to come home a few minutes early today so that I can be there before the kids get home from school so we can have a few minutes to talk. And then you roll in and you text on the way, hey, I'm coming home a little bit early today so we have a chance to talk before the boys get home. And you roll in and you go, hey, I'm home and would you like to talk? And she goes, why are you home? And you go, because I wanted to make time for us to talk. But you never come home so we can talk. The only time you ever come home early is when you're trying to manipulate me into believing something. And husbands will go like, oh, man, I'm trying here. I came home early, pissed my boss off when I left. But I'm doing this for you, for us too. And it's like, there's a space where we as husbands have to hold a space for her skepticism. For her to go, I don't believe that you're home early under a good guise, under an authentic reason. I don't believe you. And for us to be in the place where we can go, of course you don't. Why would you? I've never given you reason to. But I am today. And it not go well. It not turn into a meaningful conversation. It turn into her going, yeah, I don't trust you. And walking away. And then you going, I could have gotten a lot done if I stayed at the office. What am I going to do now? Not going back to the office. Awkward. And not doing something that makes it like more awkward. Just holding the space that she has skepticism in. And some of those skepticism moments, I'm not giving permission here, right? Somebody recently were like, you give permission to wives to do or say whatever they want, sin in whatever way they want. And we don't. It's a different conversation. So wives, talking to you. For some wives, your delivery of skepticism is expletive laden. It's character assassinating. It's condescending. It's rude, mean, and hateful. And you and Jesus got to decide where the lines are on that. It's not for me to decide where those lines are. I don't think it's for us as husbands to decide where those lines are for our wives. I think she and Jesus need to decide where those lines are. Because if we are the ones drawing those lines, we're going to draw them in our favor, not in hers. That's something that she and the Holy Spirit need to take up. And so as a wife, I'm encouraging you to be mindful. In your anger, do not sin. In your skepticism, do not sin. I don't know what that means for you. It's not carte blanche to do or say whatever you want. And it's also probably a little bit more harsh and rough around the edges than we would like to have it. Right? So, holding space for skepticism. The reason that I'm harping on this one for a second is I think this is one of those things that doesn't get enough press. And I think it's one of the lowest hanging fruit for us as husbands to show that something can be different. To show that something can be different. Okay, last one. Also hard. Okay. Humble willingness to receive feedback. Humble willingness to receive feedback. Self-explanatory. But one of those ways and places where a wife can sense safety is as she starts to see, I can tell you where you're hurting me and you won't get defensive. I can tell you where something feels off and you won't dismiss. I can tell you where something feels like it's not right and you won't deflect it. Where you can take feedback in a humble and willing way and receive that, not take it upon yourself as a big shame statement. That's not what I'm talking about. But actually receive the feedback to consider what she's saying. That will provide safety. And you're seeing my gears grind a little bit about what's going through my head. I can tell you guys, there was a season where the feedback that I received from Shelley never felt good. It was always barbed. It was always like sharp. It was cutting. It was even, I feel like sometimes even when she tried to deliver it with grace, I just still couldn't receive it very well. It just hurt. Just hurt. And hurt in a bad way, not hurt in a good way. Just hurt. Because oftentimes what she was giving me feedback on was things about me or ways about me that I either A, didn't see, so I felt stupid and embarrassed. B, I did see, and I felt like she was doubling down and just trying to heap on something. Or C, I did see and I liked. I thought was a benefit. I thought was a positive. I thought was an asset to myself, my sense of self. When really it wasn't. It was getting challenged. And those hurt the worst to try to feel. Fast forward to today, when there's something like that, it's delivered with grace. It's direct. Not a punch pulled, but it's delivered with grace. I told you on a recent webinar, I guess this was back before Christmas, where Shelley asked one day, I was telling her about something that was going on, and she was like, hey, is that the kind of man you want to be? And it wasn't condescending. It wasn't trying to take a jab. It was genuinely feedback. Doesn't sound like that's the kind of man you said you want to be. It's can I humbly receive that? Am I humbly willing to receive that and go, that doesn't feel like anything I want to hear right now, but I am going to consider what you're saying. I'm going to sit on my hands, bite my tongue, and not defend and deflect and all the stuff. So these things are key. Obviously, there's a million, right? And every wife on this call could go, actually, at my house, I need this, this, and this too, to make sure that it's safe. That's all real, right? These are big ticket that kind of work across the board. And here's the rubric in our head. If work pisses me off, she's going to pay for it. We wouldn't say it that way, right? If work taps all my eyes, my wife is going to be punished. We wouldn't say it that way, but operationally, that's the way a lot of us live. So our first step is to go back and ask ourselves, do some of that work internal, probably some root work in there as well that says, where did I determine that rubric is okay? Right. And then the second thing is how you communicate that to her. right? Because there's a difference between, hey, so I thought about it and I realized that, that's actually what I saw my dad do to my mom or my mom do to my dad. And there was some modeling in that, and I've never even challenged that myself. And so I swear I'm never going to do that to you again, right? As opposed to, hey, I see the reasons why. And one of the things I'm going to start doing is parking the car at the edge of the driveway and giving myself 4.5 minutes before I park and walk in the door so that I can journal. Is there anything that I'm dragging in the door with me from work that I might be at risk of taking out on you? And you're going to do work on that. So you can't promise that you'll never do it again. What you can promise is that you're going to try to be consistent with doing work on it so that it doesn't keep plaguing you.